And most successful companies share one thing: they develop their people. The Success Launch Point makes it simple with on-demand courses, live coaching, and a thriving professional community. Your team will gain confidence, sharpen skills, and deliver more value, while staying loyal to the company that invests in them. To take your workforce to the next level, check out modernobserver.com/launchpoint.
We are lighting the candle, a world that works. Hello, everyone. I'm Bill Correll, and I'm here with my beloved partner in world empowerment, Jan Jeremias. And we are so lucky and fortunate to be joined by another one of our mutual friends today. I guess we can call him a buddy at this point, Austin Jacob. And I'll say this first of all, Austin, welcome. It's good to have you back.
Thank you. It's good to be here now.
So how are you both doing today?
I'm fantastic. I'm doing fantastic.
Yeah.
Really enjoying, I wouldn't even say the small things in life. I'm really enjoying all moments of life. That sounds very cliche, but it's so exciting to tap into even a taste of, say, the fullness of what life has to offer in each and every moment. So I'm just so grateful. Truly.
You know, sometimes the words that you have are the ones you have to use until you get things that are more of an approximation of how it feels, because feelings are so hard to translate into other people's language, aren't they? You know, even the question of how are you today? It's almost like asking for a weather report, or you know, it's less specific than what is the temperature, and you know, is there a wind blowing, and what is the speed of the wind, and is it raining? You know, just how are you? That leaves the whole, you know, field of possibilities open for response.
It does. And I'd say that a part of anyone who chooses that kind of journey is to, what do I want to experience or express, or one and the same? And it's such a joy. It can be such a joy. I will say that, maybe not all moments or can be coined joyous, but in beauty, you know, pain can be beautiful in the same way that it's just principle based. But
I like it. There's an awful lot of subjectivity to living, isn't there?
To not look ugly.
What one person's pain is another person's joy.
I don't know if I would. I mean, to me, first of all, I love that topic, and hello, everybody. I think that what I look at it is that even within the painful moments, there are opportunities. And, you know, and I was thinking about when you announced like the partner and empowerment. And I think that even in the painful circumstances or things that come up in our lives, there is that possibility of still feeling empowered. It's not about being disempowered. It's about being present.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe that presence is painful, but you're participating in it versus living in some sort of element of denial or something like that. You know, I look at the past week of things going on for me and being very, very clear with certain things. And I think with that presence, sometimes, you know, that's where you find clarity.
There's an interesting approach to that. And I think I see very valid perspectives coming from that because I can tap into that, Jan. I also think that it's interesting to find ways of presence almost through not, I don't want to say not seeking, but more not needing to seek, almost being excited and grateful for the ability to be seeking. It's like when Bill asked, how are you? I just watched a video the other day. It was more for like childcare and things, but to ask more what questions instead of why questions, and kind of went into the etymology about it and psychology and things like that for childcare. It wasn't maybe my more fascinating topics of esotericism and things like that, but the principle was the same in that it almost opens up this gateway to how are you going to choose to approach it. And for me, I find that so fascinating that we can relate in this kind of way that life is inviting us in to reach for that presence, even if it's approached differently. I hope that made sense.
Yeah, there's many different ways to express being present. And I think for people who are just fully engaged in a life that's either working or not working, but it's irrelevant to them, whichever state it happens to be in at the moment, where they're just engaged in it, for them it's like how it is, the to step back for a moment and put an evaluation on it, or to give it a plus or a minus, whatever the experience is to disconnect from the presence. And now you're in your head using a tool that, where did you get it from? More than likely it came from the past. And what's the past all about? The past is what gives you a need to have an expectation of what's coming next. Where if you're constantly engaged in new experiences, for instance, Austin, have you ever skydived?
In my mind, no, I've never.
I think many people have. Like, it's like rhythmic breathing when you're 5 years old, but you haven't taken swimming lessons yet. Or you see the bigger kids on their bicycles being able to tool down the road, and all you can do is just maybe rock back and forth on your training wheels. I think the neat part of it is that when life occurs to you, like I can say, jumping out of an airplane for no other good reason than I gave money to do it, and to be there with my daughter who asked me to. I wasn't thinking about any of that while I was falling. Okay. My mind was about as clear as it has ever been in my recollection. It was very, very blank for about a full minute with nothing going on in it at all. It almost was like a retro experience going back to before I was born. I don't know if you have memories of before you were born, but I had a recurring dream when I was a kid that I kind of equated to coming up the birth canal, where it was like warm and I can hear this, the and then all of a sudden it's chaos. But the point of being in a life that gives you a presence that always is astounding, or is a completely new experience, and it doesn't have a frame of reference. Like, you can't grab onto an edge of it and try to understand it. It's beyond understanding. There are people that live that kind of life. And you know who comes to mind? Wendy. There are people who are in awe of the least little thing, but they genuinely are experiencing the presence of this flower in an unexpected location. And it's kind of a big deal. It's like what makes today special, as opposed to the sameness. When she talks about where she walks around, whatever country she happens to be in at the moment, and then she talks about the animals that she sees, the birds that she sees, the horses that are engaging her in conversation while she's walking by. I think about her, and my notion of how she experiences life is kind of like that, if you will.
really love that. Yeah. I can relate in a lot of ways, maybe personally, maybe not so traveling as much physically. It sounds like she got quite around the world, but traveled nonetheless and
Yeah.
experienced communication in all kinds of forms.
I
And what
think
you mentioned about, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
When you were mentioning about the skydiving, interestingly enough, one of one of my mothers, well, one of my mothers who raised me, she had the gift. One of my brothers decided to gift her with a skydiving trip, something that she wanted to do. And I talked with her one day about it. I traveled back to where I had graduated and things. And I asked her about it. And I remember she talked, it was one of the small moments of, say, anyway, it was a small moment we shared together where she related to something universal that didn't need, even though we were speaking, we approached it, we used different language, we were describing the same phenomenon of being present in that moment, and how the beauty of discovering that, you can call it polarity if you want, but that limitation, that separateness, that joy of discovering ourselves all over carried her through to, you know what, if it's meant to be, I'm gonna do it. And she did it. And and that's how she described it to me. And it was a joyous moment, unspoken moment, nonetheless shared.
Yeah.
So that was a great memory that to trigger there when you shared that, Bill.
And I think I've had that experience, not skydiving, but I've had that experience where I've literally, my mind has been basically blank for a period of time. Um, where I remember I was walking in the city, Manhattan, in the middle of a snowstorm, wee hours of the morning, like 4 or 5 a.m. It was quiet as could be. Like, I mean, for Manhattan, that's a big deal when it's quiet. The snowflakes were falling in slow motion. It's like I could see each snowflake individually.
Mm.
I was probably as one with the universe as I've had time since then as I've ever had. But yeah, I do feel like there are lots of people maybe who don't write about it, but who go through the world looking like as if like Wendy does, like really paying attention. Yeah.
So what's brilliant about her is, can you imagine she lives that way, okay?
Well, I
Or she
mean,
doesn't. Or she doesn't. I mean, for her, it's how I do things. You know what I mean?
well, yeah, and I agree, but I think there are people who do live like that.
I
Maybe
agree
not
too.
100% of the time, but spend a lot of time there.
Well, I think what's remarkable about Wendy, I know that there's other people who never tell me about it, but I think it's extremely generous for her to share that perspective on the world, that not only are there some remarkable things in the world, but guess what? You only have to walk outside your front door and look around in order to find most of what's really going to satisfy you. It's
Yeah,
it's
yeah, I mean, I agree, and I think for those of us who kind of look at the world, it's what keeps us going,
yeah.
because otherwise life can get very heavy.
It's true. We need cookies every once in a while, don't we?
I mean, I think if you yeah, I mean, I think it's, for me, I know it's the one of the ways I navigate the world, and I think it's part of one of the reasons I'm probably still here.
Not having to carry the weight alone, per se.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just, otherwise, getting pulled into the nuances and the whatever the situations that we all encounter in everyday life can be very heavy. And so I think that we need that to realize, to experience, and to realize there's more than what we're, than what we really than what we're seeing at the moment. That might be hard. That there's more than that.
What I want to go back to is that what if objectively there are no ways that the world occurs? What I was saying before in response to what uh, Austin said was the subjectivity of the world is what allows people to kind of resonate with each other as each one of us hears something. I can imagine that Wendy could stand up in a group of 50 people and some of them would just walk away. They wouldn't get it. They're not interested. They're not tuned into how can I be more present, or, looking at her lovely shining face and smiling while she's telling you about this amazing little bird that she saw. And she does the same thing about really important things in life too, but being able to distinguish in her life what was kind of an aha out of the mundane, that normally just slides into the background and you look past. So that subjectivity is that what's the difference between people who see the world, using that old metaphor, the glass half full or the glass half empty? It's the same amount of water in the glass either way. And what is each group getting out of it? What are the people who see it half full getting out of it? And what are the people who see it half empty getting out of it? I think there's a reward going on there somehow that allows them to continue not questioning their own view of that glass of water, if you will. Does that make any sense? Why are some people happy and other people miserable? And they're in the same position.
It's a question, isn't it? I speaking for myself and the wholeness, as far as I can bring myself in this current wave crash moment to conceptualize, all things that are in that, what I just described, are aspects of myself already. And so if I approach things like bigger questions that I would love people to hold more dynamic conversations in groups outside of just our good friends here of these, because it takes a lot of, like you said, coming together with resonance to even build up language and understanding to support these kinds of questions. But to your question, my approach would be rooted in that perspective, which is these are all aspects of me anyway. So I first, to even approach the question, have to, how am I approaching myself in it? What is my relation to what I'm asking to get an idea of, say, other, whatever other would be? That would be the question, because if not, it would be inside, if that makes sense. So that's a deep one. That's a tough one, but I think it often starts, I should say, within or individually, one at a time. But it's so much more than, one affects all. So it's the inverted kind of thinking.
Well, here's what's so delicious about what you just said is that we as human beings, I mean, you answered my question by not answering my question. I mean, which is fantastic. What I asked is, why are some people happy and some people miserable? And what you said was, wherever I go, and I'm paraphrasing, but so I'm doing shorthand here. Wherever I go, what I find is me. And I think that's really fabulous, because is it you or is it the you know yourself to be lately? I mean, this whole question, that when folks used to say to me, I'm the type of person, and then whatever came after that was like, oh, really? Are there types of people like that? And they said, do y'all get together and talk? I mean, what, how do you know there are other people like this, that you're a type of person? But I think bringing the type of person in allows for the opportunity to relate. Like, I feel like how I feel is normal. And I do think other people feel this way, but not everyone. And so you can understand a little bit better about what I'm going to say. I'm going to tell you and give you the credentials of who I view myself to be. And I think that's very generous of people. It's taking a chance, right? You're kind of tipping your hand and showing your cards before you come out with whatever you're gonna say. And I also think that is operating from a particular level of social skill and dynamics. That the need to compare and contrast, not against yourself, but against standards that are, in other people or something of that nature. Like, we all know that we can go find this type of person somewhere, right? Well, that may be an element of them like yesterday or tomorrow, but they might be a little bit different than that today. What if they are?
I think it comes down to who you are. I mean, right now I'm contributing on a book about belonging. And the
Mm.
whole idea of belonging is if you don't belong to yourself, you belong nowhere. And to realize that, like you can go, and I give an example in my chapter of going into maybe basically identical situations, and one time having a fabulous time, and the other time not having a good time at all, and realizing that the common denominator was me. And the fact that I didn't really feel whatever, like I belonged on that day to myself, like I was not in a good frame, whatever it was, like I wasn't owning where I was at that point. And so, I think that what you speak to is that you can go in, be in with a group of people. It doesn't matter the group of people. If you go in kind of like, and it's not exactly confidence. It's kind of like this because it's a combination of acceptance of who you are, of seeing yourself how you are on that given day, of awareness. It's all those things. And if you go in, then basically you can go anywhere.
It's an interesting perspective. I want to hear you say more about that, because on the one hand, and this word is without a pejorative meaning, but the word self-centered, comes to mind, and I don't mean that from the standpoint of I'm more important, or that self-centered, if we would say as a derogatory comment. I'm saying it as like a place in the universe for your energy to come from, where you have identified the source of that energy in yourself and its contribution to the universe. And I think in that situation, there's power in both acknowledging and being responsible and accountable for how you are in a situation, as long as you're not using it to be a reason, okay, if you will, a reason why this or a reason why I can't do that. If you're doing that, then I think maybe you're spending too much time thinking about the construct, that you've created of yourself, which I can speak for me. I don't remember what I was like 5 years ago. I really don't. I've been through so much since then. There's been so many different things acting on me. I'm interested in so many different things. So I don't typically walk into a situation, Jan, with much attention on. For me, it's more like skydiving when I walk into a room of people, if you will. Like, I don't know what's there. Let me go and see and discover. And I'm not looking. Maybe I am, and I'm fooling myself, Austin. But maybe I am looking for myself. But
No, I'm not even, I don't know that if it's looking for yourself. I'm saying that you basically know, like it's that whole idea is I get up and I'm in the, and I see myself for where I am on that day.
right.
Know that whatever situation I go into, I'm bringing myself with, myself is going along for the ride. Like myself is there, like I'm going along. So maybe not looking at the exact circumstances is like, oh my gosh, this was a horrible experience, or this was that, this happened because of this outside of myself.
Yeah.
Much more like this probably happened because I was in this particular frame of mind that day, and, I wasn't open or whatever, and not in a critical way, but much more in a self-observing kind of way of,
Yeah.
like, awareness of it, like, "Okay, this is where I was that day, and this is why that probably happened." I mean, the other thing that I, spent a lot of time over the weekend kind of realizing, and it was really about, and I don't, in some ways I don't like to bring it up, but it being the root of belonging, being whether to yourself or to others or to another, to a community, to friends, to the world, the universe, is really about love. Like, is the and threading emotion to me is
Right.
just that is love. And I have to thank my mother because she gave me this ring for my birthday, which says always with you. And I said, okay, like here it was. Like to me, if I think about wanting to belong or feeling at home, however you want to phrase it, feeling at
Yeah.
home, it's all about that. It's, and whether you're belonging to the universe and you're a part, and which we all are, or you're belonging to a crowd or to yourself or to nature or to pets, it doesn't really
Yeah.
matter.
Well, I appreciate you, saying more about that because you're really distinguishing something that that I want to understand. And what I'm also hearing is that it's more process related than decision related. In terms of if you have a reaction to something, for example, are there circumstances that set you up for that particular moment where you processed it a particular way? And is there something to learn from that? Or is that in the right domain of thinking, or is it even in a different plane than that?
Well, I mean, I think that maybe that's part of it, but that's not it in its entirety,
Right.
at all. I mean, I think then you look at it not even as like, oh, yes, I can learn from this, not in, oh, I've got to change this immediately because I don't like this about myself kind of attitude. It's much more looking at it from a space of, and not trying to, and then maybe separating it out from trying to label it as good or bad and just labeling it as an experience.
Or maybe that was interesting.
Right. Well, I used to use the word interesting. I don't usually use that. I now adopt Arlene's word, which is curious. That's curious.
I like that.
That's curious. But
That's a Chinese curse. May you live in interesting times.
mhm. So, yeah, so it's a bit different than just that overly critical. It's just, I mean, I think of it as when you talk about pure awareness, I think about it as awareness.
Yeah. So what's really kind of interesting here too that I'm hearing because the way I'm using the word is that there's more to be discovered here possibly. And I wonder if again we're talking about two perspectives. There's probably thousands of perspectives really, but if you think about the people who are um, you know regard themselves as introverts versus people who regard themselves as extroverts. Um, I keep seeing people who have always known themselves as introverts becoming really great extroverts by spending the time working on it and working with it, if you will. People who are very, very outgoing. One person who I think is the poster child of that who we all know and love is Kate Mollison. She has identified herself as a recovering introvert, but if you ever meet her, it's almost like the most positive Tasmanian devil you've ever been around. She's just an amazing amalgamation of energy, outgoing, extremely thoughtful and communicative, and very articulate about almost everything. And that to me is kind of like a pretty neat possibility for all human beings. No matter how you regard yourself right now, you don't have to like own that. You can just say that's kind of, I weigh 162 pounds this morning. I don't know what I'm going to weigh tomorrow or next week or next year. Last year, I weighed 155, on some days, so in terms of looking at life and how you're interacting with people and going into a room and experiencing it, I think the genuineness that I'm hearing, Jan, is that you ever have moments where you just surprise yourself?
I mean, do I?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that, you know, yeah, I mean, you go in and you do something and you're like, oh my gosh, or you say something and you're like, did that just come out of my mouth?
Yes.
Like, did I just say that? Because that sounded really wise, or something, like sounded dead on, you
Yeah.
know. Yeah, I mean, I think we all have moments like that. You don't want to be shut off to those moments at all.
Right.
But I think there's also this element of looking around the world and I don't know, trying to connect with all aspects of the world versus
Not
trying
there.
to just live in the world.
Yeah. If I
So,
could chime in a little bit,
yeah, I want to hear more about that. That's great. Go ahead,
all
Austin.
aspects, that makes me feel like that's a great bridge to tie in some of the thoughts I've been having about like going back to when Bill was talking about this idea of like self-centered, but maybe not in that kind of way that it's typical to think of what that means, and connecting to all aspects. So the way I kind of approach, and then also it makes me think of alternative or just the different natures of how we all experience itself. So we all kind of have different ways. So how do we form together? How does resonance become a thing? Why is it a thing? I think when going to that center, that's what is affording us, rather. I don't want to say allow, like it's a choice. It's more you can choose or you cannot choose, but it's there. It's more like reality creation. All right, so back to the point. Moving through, if you want to consider it moving through all these perspectives, reality, emotion, um, I think, at least speaking for myself, for a lot of our lives, we'll spend a good majority of it seeking, trying to figure out what is my relation to what I'm experiencing or feeling. So all those patterns, and then maybe for another portion of our life, we go through the stage of, okay, I'm okay being in, separate from what maybe is being presented or I've figured out for my life, and then maybe the last third, if you will, just sake of analogy here, we go into the integration stage where we're almost preparing then for the next cycle, if you will. But for some people, and this is where I'll tie in my own experience with it, I guess, with it, it can be very overwhelming at times when you are outsourcing how you're relating to any and everything. In other words, you're not self-centered. There's not almost a focal point in which your experience is both adaptable, changeable, but also unchangeable. In other words, it's almost like where your sovereignty lies, where your ability to offer the world, if that's what you care to carry out, the perspective that, hey, this center point that is here, it's just one aspect of what you can tap into, and it almost affords everyone else compassion as well, not only for yourself, but then modeling, essentially. That was a rundown of tying in, be holding back for a while, listening to all your
Well, see, here's
thoughts.
the accident of the world. We get into the conversation that's going on. Do you ever notice that somebody says something and then we respond to that, and then suddenly we're having a conversation about that, just like this show, just like 37 minutes ago when we said hello, how are you doing? So we're really fortunate to be able to line up the ingredients of maybe a great conversation, as opposed to those places where we're really not quite sure what kind of conversation we're walking into. I don't know about you. I looked forward to getting together here today. Did you?
I did, but if I may follow that comment, could you imagine that might be perspective. So, you know, growing up, I carried that perspective naturally, where it's unnormal to think a conversation I walk into, oh, it might go somewhere down a rabbit hole. That's a norm, and I enjoy life like that. That is my norm.
Yep. It is for most people who have active gray matter. Let's put it that way. You know that in sports they have all the statistics and everything, and you have the fantasy football and all the things that you can put down on paper as to how your dream team is going to do. But guess what? They really do have to play the game at some point, don't they? It's what our life is all about. It's like a football player who can sit on the sideline and then imagine what the game looks like every single play. Or Lance Armstrong, before he got into a big race, he would sit and he would meditate, for a half hour, and he would imagine the entire course, the ups, the downs, the speeds, the wind in his face. Tiger Woods, the same sort of thing, thinking about planning for 4 or 5 holes ahead like a chess master. Where do I want to be? What side of the fairway do I want to hit it to? Which iron am I going to use, for my approach shot? But at some point you have to swing the club. And I think for some of us, when the club does something different than we were hoping for or planning for, we might be a little bit attached to how we envisioned it. And I wonder how many people go through their lives measuring the difference between what they thought was going to happen and what actually did happen. And our conversations aren't like that. You're not going to imagine what we're going to talk about every week until we get into this conversation. And there's other aspects of life that are just like that. I'm sure you can come up with examples. But in terms of the rabbit hole side, what would that look like for you, Austin?
Well, what I was hearing was like this phenomenon almost of, oh yeah, neuroplasticity. We can back it up with a binary understanding of ways, and yet we'll easily be comfortable with what we had right before the phenomenon. And it's not that we suddenly forgot. We do go through, in my own opinion, cycles of forgetting for bigger purposes, but in just, oh yeah, we can adapt and we can change. For the people that have gotten to a point where that was either afforded, presented, or divinely interwoven for, say, an opportunistic acquiring or giving them agency. And I think you're posing the question of, well, what does it mean if that is the case? And then the choice is to not engage in that kind of way, and not a conscious way. How do I say that?
I think it's brilliant what you just said. There are a lot of people who just stay home.
Yeah, I mean, I have lived, speaking for myself, I've lived so many different kinds of lives.
Yeah.
And while I have my roots and I know where I've branched up at, as Spirit Imaginings likes to say, I am forever grateful, though, that no one. There are so many beautiful mirrors and aspects of myself that have been infinitely, if you will, giving me the opportunities. But the I that I say I am, the Austin that says Austin is this avatar right now reflecting in this moment, had to actually choose, oh, I'm going to do something with this. I'm not going to allow what I've been, what I've related to, what I've enjoyed, what I've shame, guilt, all the things, emotion. It's in a way what I was seeking to avoid or understand and convince myself I'm more than this separation that I'm actually enjoyed. Like you said, we're comfortable with our separation, we're comfortable with our patterns, and there can be shame around that. That's a form of trauma. Anyway, back to the point, getting to a place where you're like, oh well, this is actually kind of beautiful. And beauty can be painful in a sense, but it's ours for the taking. I feel like I got away from that, but somebody else go take the reins.
Well, you know what you're talking about also. I mean, look at childbirth. I mean, that's an amazing event. I mean, it's why. I mean, it is the why, okay? However, it's extremely painful for a period of time for everybody involved. And during that process, I haven't asked any women in the delivery room what they were thinking about, but I have a feeling they were just really present to whatever was going on in their body and the pain that they were experiencing, during contractions. But when the contractions subsided, what were they thinking about then? What filled that, after the peak, what filled the down and then the trough? What was in that? What kind of presence was there?
Right. Isn't that interesting to think about? Yeah. In any moment that it's like you were saying, pain is almost inviting into the body. And what does the body do? It's what you were calling the self-centered. It's bringing you to a presence almost by form. That's why often big catalysts, if you will, or catastrophes in our lives, I
Yeah.
have plenty I could tell stories about, brought me to a place where it was irrefutable to pay attention to this. You're going to be present because this is, you don't need to send it outward anymore. You need to do it here. And often pain is an easy, pay attention.
Well, if you've ever been held at gunpoint or robbed on a city street,
Yes.
there's nothing else to pay attention to than right now.
Mhm.
You
Yeah.
know?
And that reminds me of, I think it was you. Yes, it was. You were talking with Mike, and I sent this to my sister because my sister served as a combat medic, and when he was talking about some of his relations and what in certain instances there are very esoteric forms of assistance and support that we as humans we don't you don't need to be taught but anyway, so that really touched me to kind of join into those moments of we're more powerful sometimes than even will convince ourselves of.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
there.
God bless the moments where we become unrecognizable to ourselves, in my humble opinion. I really think that's where living occurs.
I was thinking about that whole idea of what you were talking about with labor, because what ends up happening is there's a moment, um, having a number of never experiencing, but having a number of friends. Like I have two students who are maternity nurses, and
Yeah.
and everything is that the body goes through a period of it actually shakes, like literally physically can't stop shaking. It's sort of like a recalibration, they say, of the nervous system. It's like, the whole system has to like kind of recalibrate from the physical trauma, but also from everything else that's happening.
Right.
And animals do that all the time.
Mhm.
And that's why animals will get up and do a full body shake, because it recalibrates their nervous system. And I'm a huge advocate of shaking. I do a lot of shaking type stuff in my classes, because I really feel like, and it really does help. If you've ever just stood there and like shaking your arms, it really doesn't feel good. But there's something about that whole idea of it's almost like a period of integration, of the experience to me.
Yeah.
It's And if you've ever been through anything where, whether like not at gunpoint, but something else that's that traumatic, there is a period afterwards where, um, sort of like when the adrenaline is starting to go down, that you kind of need to step back and say, okay, okay, take a deep breath, let this integrate, and let me absorb this what just happened.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so that's what I was thinking about when you were talking about labor and delivery.
I love what you said there, because I think all of us have an experience sometime in our life being scared out of our wits and then going or something. Like get that off of me,
Yeah, it reminds me of those moments of like pinch me, but you can think of anything that really surprised you and you almost had to double look. Or but I also think there's power in like Jen was kind of maybe referring to, of being there to actually experience it also. Often I like to think the divine feminine has a way of softly repeating her presence to be known, if you will, for things like that. And oh, something on the right side distracted me. I'm so sorry. Lost my train of thought. Wait, oh, being so yeah, when you're like Jen was maybe referring to, um, yeah, no.
Well, I want to hear
Gotta
more
love
about
myself.
I want to hear more about the divine feminine.
The divine feminine. Yeah, and I'm trying to connect where my thought was going with that. But
It's all
just
right.
like affording yourself being present for it. Oh, right. Okay, that's where it was. So I imagine like think of a protractor, if you will. And from the point where you're having an experience, you can, in the way I like to understand different approaches to quantum timeline experimentation, if you will, if you pick a point, there are theories. I'll keep it theory talk, where the more you focus on that point, and in a linear base, if you will, just for sake of explaining, you approach that same point, it adapts and it changes. But also, if you try to do it right immediately, like if I this sounds funny, but if I slap myself in the face and I was like immediately after, oh, there's no pain, there's no pain, it's conflict and there's not enough. um it's almost like you can't fool yourself. How do I say, you can't trick your own relation to whatever your focus point is. But it's
Yeah.
interesting to consider how, after you have fully allowed yourself the divine feminine fully and completely, there's no need to maybe go back to that specific focal point or change your past, however you might understand different quantum language there, because it's all influencing your moment now. And it seems kind of infinite. Oh, well, I could pick infinite amount of points. You can, but that's the secret. The secret is in what you asked originally about the feminine power, because the more present you are in it, the more self-centered, the more where you can see all from one point, you're actually allowing motion through it all. Anyway, I tried.
You know what? You did, and it was fantastic. You know what came to mind? Are you familiar with the Doppler effect?
Yes.
Like that train when it came through, and it was and then it was as it got further away.
Yeah. I
Or
was listening.
a train going through through an intersection where the bell goes. The bell's doing the same thing all that time, but the occurrence for you is that the pitch changed. And we kind of experience life like that. That's what I took away from what you were saying, is that your point of view so much influences how you actually experience something. And the closer you get to it when it actually occurs, and then the further you are away from it after it's over, changes the experience, because now you've processed it somehow. It's not the experience anymore. It's you know, reliving the experience in whatever way you can, or something
Well,
like
because the experience becomes part of you.
Yes. And
It's
that's the completion.
it's not like you can take it out of you once it's happened.
that. Oh yeah, no, I'm good.
Yeah, and so the experience becomes one with you, no matter.
But have you ever had an experience where your skin itched and then it didn't?
Yeah, yeah, no, I mean, yes, but I'm just saying that, if you hear that bell, you can't unhear that bell, you know?
Right.
So it becomes part of you. You may not, it's just you integrate it, and a lot of times those integrations happen instantaneously. Like you hear something and then you don't hear it and it's still part of you. And then other times there's something that happens that takes you a long time to integrate, that, or well, you integrate it right away. It's just your awareness of the integration takes some time because
Yes.
it's part of you, but maybe you deny that it's part of you, or maybe, it's whatever it is, it takes a period of time for you to actually own it, let's say, but it is there and it is a part of you and you can't un unmake it happen.
Yes.
Just living an experience and thinking to yourself, like compartmentalizing yourself and saying, well, I did that, but I'm not that anymore.
Yeah. Have you
It's
ever
like,
experienced the glitch? Have you ever heard that term? Like so the way what I'm picking up is it's like you're carrying a knowing, an integration, a truth, but it doesn't necessarily need to be expressed or given out to be processed. And how did I tie that in with the matrix? Oh, yeah, it's almost like you experienced something that you know it can only be known. It's like gnosis. But it made me think a couple months ago, I swear, I was sitting at this light and it was green and no one was moving. And I almost felt like kind of claustrophobic for a moment because I was wondering, wait, what's going on? But anyway, people would just laugh and glitch.
So here's the real interesting part of it. We ascribe so much significance to our understanding of what that experience is now as a memory. And science shows us that our memory is, really poor, especially the further away we get from an event. And they've shown over and over and over again that more often than not, what we remember about an occurrence, especially something that happened when we were a kid, was not what happened, but our repeated stories about what happened over the years.
mhm.
And it's just kind of like a very cool thing if humans can be aware of their propensity to do that or the capability to do that.
Mm.
All the things in life that they're absolutely sure about, especially what they're carrying around as a grudge, or they're carrying around as a reason or something that's taking or stealing, from their joy. What if you just aren't remember the right thing? And the other part of it is our experience of it. We need it to be right. Okay. There's a fundamental, I think it has to do with the survival of the species that we have adopted this way of processing things in our experience, and our version of it, or however we remember it, usually has to come out in language, right? So that language is an expression of what we experienced, and it kind of needs to be correct and truthful, and even when it is inaccurate, we will, people will die, for the words that are coming out of their mouth, reporting what happened way back when. And other people that were there will go, well, I saw something completely different. And what's remarkable to me is I think there's fun in discussing the differences, the perceptions that occurred. And it's almost like when Jan was saying, how am I feeling about today? And I always like what you say too, Jan. Not you didn't say it today, but what do I need? What do I need today? What's missing for me? What would really, would really help? But there's almost like this Columbo, Inspector Clouseau, curiosity questioning that can go on and say, oh, you remember something different? Let's not argue about that. What do you remember? Tell me all about it. Imagine if we all behaved in that way as opposed to, well,
I was just about to say, I love that how you described, I call it agency, but I think you used the P word, but the ability to recognize it. And the more people that can do that in uniform can allow, I would say positive, I'll say positive things to come from it.
Yeah.
Instead of just distortion kind of floating around. Powerful recognition there.
Yeah, there was a great man I listened to a lot named Bucky Fuller. I never met him. I never actually got to hear him speak live, but I listened to a lot of his speeches. And what he discovered after not speaking to people for 2 full years was he's pretty sure that all of us have impressions and none of us have the facts.
I would say all the time that we're logical beings. And I think people overlooked what I was getting at. The principle behind that was that despite what it might appear, we call it reptilian, if that makes you more comfortable in understanding this concept. We have I don't even call it need, but like I forget how you beautifully articulated it, to be right, or at least logical, a point to be like, oh, that back and forth.
Yep.
And
but go ahead, Jan.
No, I was going to say what made me think of what you just shared, both of you just shared, is that beyond articulation and whatever the facts, like how you express the facts or express verbally those facts. I think every experience has an energetic imprint upon us. Like there's something energetically that happens within us. And I think that is... that's to me almost like beyond the words, because I've had experiences, and we started out like that when, Austin was saying something and you were saying some stuff has no words. And I think that that's what it makes me think about, is the fact that we have experiences which we cannot articulate, at least for a period of time, that we don't have the ability to communicate with others, no matter what experience it is. It's like trying, and people would ask me how to describe yoga, and to me it's something beyond words. Like I can't really describe the experience that I have when I practice. I try to, but I know I almost always feel like it falls short in some way. And there's something about having an experience that has an energetic imprint upon you, and then it's beyond words. And so basically you can have a conversation about, oh, what did you think what did you see about this experience, or how did you feel about this experience, and how whatever. Right. But that doesn't change your energetic feeling of when it happened. Like that has affected your physiology in some way. So I hope that was clear.
What I took away from that, and I love the most, is at best we're having an impression that there's no language for, and we're expressing it in approximations. And we have to do this through this filter, like the way I was using self-centered before, no pejorative, just as like a way to describe a way of being. Like you and I breathe, and we also need to be right. Okay. There's nothing wrong with that. People hear that like, what's wrong with, no, you don't have a choice. You're wired to operate in the world as if you're using good information when you make your decisions. Yes. To operate otherwise would mean hook me up to a morphine drip and let me sleep all the time, So to go out into the world, you have to have the confidence, and trust and judgment. And when you talk about your sovereignties, that's not an expression that I'm really familiar with, but what I hear in that are capacities and capabilities that you own, if that's what it is, then we all have to have some of that somewhere in order to progress and grow. And I think that's where life really is the best, is, when you surrender to the fact that you are someone who knows it all, and tell the truth about it to yourself. I mean, who cares if anybody else knows? They do, okay? But it's not something you go and proclaim to the world. It's something that you own, and you have the choice to put it on or take it off like a jacket, as opposed to it's undistinguished and it's just it's a fault. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the big things I heard you say at the beginning, after Jan was talking, was everyone's operating at the level of consciousness that they're at, and that's perfectly perfect. Or anyway, language. And then the other, sovereignty. Sovereignty is interesting to, I guess, define, because the way I look at it is sovereignty would be more synopsis to like realization or remembrance. So it's not like so much tangible, but we almost substitute the word to get us closer to what it is. Almost like how I've typically seen people use God. You know, where they're all kind of we're trying to get as close to something that we can't define as
Yep.
with using a universal definition of it, if that makes sense.
Energy, essence, something of that nature.
Resonance, yeah.
Yeah. Well, we did it again, folks. Unbelievable. How do we manage to do this every single week, except for when we don't?
It was Jan's fault.
Yeah. Well, it's a good respite from the rest of the world, and the rest of the world's keeping score. You know, I think they're curious. You know, if I pay my bills and stuff. If I don't, they come looking for me somehow, or if I do, they reward me with more bills. But all I can say is it's just wonderful to spend time with both of you today. And what comes to mind is that old saying that a life unexamined is not one worth living. And Jan, it's clear to me, I would be a fan of spending a half hour in your mind. That might be as much as I could take at one sitting, but you know, all I can tell you is I bet I would learn a lot.
I don't know, but thank you, Bill. Yeah, I think you would probably get really exhausted if you were in there.
I might bring Austin along for support.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyhow, either of you have like some summary comments, or you know, add a little tidbit you'd like to throw in at the end here? Cookies, as I like to say, and Austin, you have your way of languaging that.
Yeah,
go ahead, Austin.
I'd say from the very opening question of how are you, that beautiful moment to choose to give life to whatever answer or approach. That's the beauty of it. And I would say my takeaway for our meeting today would be approach life with more laughter, because
that's great. That's great. That's a great gift to give everybody, is me especially today. I will take that. Jan?
I guess something that I think as I said it, I realized, that's really true, that we can't unlive something we've lived, and so, as much as maybe certain things happen and we wish they hadn't happened, but we can't undo, you can't undo it. So don't spend a lot of time there.
That's a great gift. And I will just say, ladies and gentlemen, folks at home, we are lighting the candle, a world that works. And today I will make this request of you. After you hang up, go find somebody in your life and let them know they matter. Reach out to them by phone, text, email, and just let them know that because they're in the world, your life works. And if they ever need you for anything at all, especially if they ever need you for a last phone call, make sure that they do call. And then you do what you have to do to get them on the phone a second time. That being said, thank you all, love you all, and have a great week. And come back and tell us all about it. Bye for now.
Bye-bye, everybody.
You've been listening to Lighting the Candle, a World That Works, part of the Exvadio podcast network. You can catch every episode of Lighting the Candle, as well as the rest of the network, at exvadio.com, the Apple Podcasts app, YouTube, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Audible, Amazon Music, and wherever you find podcasts.